Okay, good afternoon, everybody. One of the things that struck me last year at the symposium was the fact that there was an awful lot of discussion about academic studies. There were a great number of people there from academic institutions and from manufacturers. But I thought it'd be useful to have a look at actually what's happening in the development world and how that is influencing the way that buildings are being designed and how the design process takes place, and then look at that against the background of where we've come from. So hopefully we'll get a little bit of an explanation on that as we go through. I work for a company called Canary Wharf. We build rather large buildings, rather large development on the east side of London. Canary Wharf morphed from Olympia and York, a Canadian company that was started in the 1980s, went bust in about 93, something like that. But Canary Wharf as a developer has, I would say, almost a unique position in as much as we build buildings and then we run them afterwards. So we get a lot of feedback from what's happening in the buildings, and we take that feedback and we put that back into the design. And then when you factor into that what the market's looking for and what the market's asking for, we come up with a design for buildings which to some may seem a little bit excessive, but certainly for us as a developer in trying to work in a very competitive market where we're trying to market and sell buildings is something we believe works. So against that sort of background, I can tell you that we've purchased on existing buildings almost 600 lifts, roughly 120 escalators, and we've currently got under construction on 3 major projects, a further 72 lifts and a further 39 escalators. Just to let you look at that, Crossrail station that we're building, we're responsible for building the station and a retail above it. Just out of interest, the roof truss for that building will be the largest timber structure in Europe when it's finished. Everything below the waterline is the station, everything above is the retail. So we built that in a cofferdam, and that goes live in 2019 for the station, 2016 for the retail. We're currently building BP4 building project we've got with Connie, 2 10-car groups serving a 20-floor building. We've got fire lifts and good lifts in those. And a building that's sort of set the world alight in recent days for all the wrong reasons. 20 Fenchurch Street. We've got 2 double-deck 7-car groups in there. Again, the interesting part about that building is the top of the building, the profile part, is going to be actually an area that's open to the public. There's a couple of shuttle lifts that will take people up and down. There's going to be restaurants and a garden up there that people can get the views from. We've got 2 20-ton vehicle lifts in there, roped traction. Connie told me that they're the biggest they've ever done. They've got some phenomenal amount of rope on those things, something like 7 kilometres of rope per lift. It's rope 6 to 1, but a big project. And we've got 10 fire goods and access lifts. So to know where we're going, we really need to look at where we've come from. And where we've come from is the traditional traffic analysis basis. And the 2 key things in that were the sort of 15% handling capacity, 30-second interval. And those were the mantra that went through. And that was the sort of thing that sustained design through the 90s and into the 2000s. But there were some game changes that were taking place. And those 2 game changes came in the early 2000s when we saw that in our buildings, particularly in the financial sector, as the financial sector expanded, people were tending to put more and more people into existing buildings so that the level of population in those buildings were exceeding by some considerable measure the original 1 to 14 that we looked at in for the prestige offices. Also during that time, destination control was gaining a little bit of influence. More manufacturers were offering it. It was originally offered just by Schindler, but of course as time's gone on, Thyssen, Otis, Connie have all offered that. But for me, the big game changer was the publication of BCO 2009. And the reason for that was it changed a lot in terms of the way buildings were looked at and things were viewed in terms of performance of lifts. With overpopulated buildings, we found ourselves in a situation where we're suffering from poor lift service. We had a situation where destination control was gaining traction and credibility. And 2009, BCO 2009 moves effectively the measure of performance from handling capacity and interval to average waiting time and time to destination. And those things are far more tangible to letting agents, to marketing people, than perhaps interval and handling capacity. BCO 2009 recognised increased density levels in offices. It recognised the use of simulation techniques, so that was a first for that publication. Use of destination control systems, because they were becoming more popular. And it changed lift performance measurement criteria. And it also recognised the lunchtime performance. That was the first, I think, in that BCO publication. And what that did, it had a huge impact on the letting market and the way buildings were let. And what it did is it provided the letting agents with a language that was far more tangible than the language of interval and handling capacity. So the letting agents who know absolutely nothing about lifts, but know an awful lot about 2009 BCO, were starting to talk to clients about average waiting times, time to destination. BCO compliance becomes a big issue. One of the things that you see with lots of brochures, lots of information that's published, the lift performance is BCO compliant. Now there's a bit of a contradiction in that, because we'll talk about density levels in a minute. But in terms of the average waiting time, in terms of the time to destination, those were the key things. We had this drive to higher densities. There was this issue about trying to make buildings sweat, make them work harder, make them earn their keep, put more people in them. And destination control systems are seen as high tech. We can argue the nuances between them and where they're used for and whether that's really right, but they are seen as high tech. And in the marketing world, high tech means we can sell it. So those are the things that are sort of sitting in the background. So what sells buildings at 3 Ls? It's not necessarily location, 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 although that is important, but it's lobbies. Lobbies are an expression of the building and the tenants who are in there. This is us, big, grand, this is what it represents. It's loos. You'd be staggered at the amount of time and money that's spent on trying to get the right type of fittings, the right type of stone, the right type of lighting in toilets. It's unbelievable. And then the other one is obviously lifts. Lifts tend to be an extension of the architect's requirement of the ground floor. So he wants that architectural intent taken through into the cars. So we wind up with cars with very fancy finishes, weigh an awful lot, up to a ton sometimes, just for the finishes. And that's an expression of the architect's ego, I think, in taking that through. So where have we got to? We've got to the point where we're looking as a developer for robust systems. And we're looking for robust systems in the buildings. To drive that, the letting people are saying to people, make your building sweat, make it work harder. So we're looking at densities of 1 to 8. Where before it was 1 to 14, we've moved to 1 to 10. 1 to 8 is now becoming the norm for all the buildings that we're looking at. No discounting of the population for absenteeism. So everybody's going to turn up on the day. High space utilisation within the buildings. And we're talking about a percentage of NIA. So 80, 90%. 90% on trading floors. 80% on office floors. We're looking at future-proofing the design of the building in the base build. So what can we do with the base build that's going to enable this building to go forward for the next 50 or 100 years and be adaptable to what's coming down the track? So we're trying to second guess that and trying to establish what that might be. So some of the things that we look at, multiple transfer floors. In the original design, instead of having transfer floors where one group ends and the other one starts, mid, high, low, rise, we'll have multiple transfer floors. Show you an illustration of that in a minute. Extended blind hoistways. In some of the lower buildings we've put extended blind hoistways in, which give us more flexibility going forward, means the low-rise lifts can go up a bit further. And obviously we put soft spots in for things like lifts and escalators, particularly at the lower levels, where trading floors may come along a little bit later in the day. Excuse me. So an example of multiple transfer floors, this type of arrangement is not uncommon at Canary Wharf. What it does mean is that you have to have the capability for the low-rise group to serve up to level 7 and still meet the performance, and the high-rise group to serve from level 5 to the top, wherever that falls. It's just an illustration.
Split the population of 7, 6 and 5, or the double counted?
No, only one level of population. So whatever the population is on level 7, that's served by one group or the other. Yeah. We have the situation where we've taken the low-rise shafts right to the top of the building. Now, again, that's sometimes been done for structural reasons because it suits structurally. But we have done that to provide us with more flexibility going forward. And I can tell you, in all the buildings we've done that, the use has been made of that space. We've either had the low-rise extending up. One instance, a company put their restaurant on the top floor. So they wanted the low-rise lift to serve the top floor. So there's ways and means that's been done and where it's been utilised. So that's something else that we've done. When we talk to tenants and prospective organisations that want to take, and we're talking here obviously some big tenants, when they generally look to take space, they have their own project teams. And in their own project team, they have their own VT advisor. So we're looking to provide the tenant with a robust VT design, high-tech equipment, destination control, touchscreens, personalised interfaces. This was something that was spoken about a little bit earlier on. In-car displays, where we've had examples of people saying, we want you to group our people in our lifts, and as they go up, they get a video, giving them a promotional video of the company. Or if a visitor comes, about what the company sells and what they do. Landing touchscreens and interfaces. When you badge your card, it's hijack, welcome, have a good day, go to lift B. So the sort of things that have been asked for. So these are all marketing gimmicks, but they're things that are personalising the service. And we spoke earlier about waiting times and about keeping people entertained. It's making people feel good about the arrival and the user experience. These are all terms which are important. Green is obviously important. Something was discussed yesterday. The power use of lifts in a building compared to the rest of the building is minuscule. But you still have to go through that process. You still have to demonstrate you've got regenerative drives, shut down on idle, those type of things. Sustainability is going to become a big issue because it's just not about the fact that you're sourcing stuff from sustainable sources. It's also about what happens at the end of the life. How do you recycle this stuff? What's going to happen to it? And one of the examples we looked at is stainless steel. Stainless steel is made up of many different elements. Put it all together and you've got a product. Try to separate it at the end. It's very difficult, very difficult. Security is a big issue. So integrated systems where badging on the call stations, badging to get into the building, badging to get through the lobby are important. So all those factors are really big issues with tenants. We have to try to satisfy that. And the lifts play a big part in that process. Our requirements as a developer, we're talking about BCO compliant design, albeit at the higher density levels. We're looking about flexibility at the time of design and into the future, because that tenant we originally built for, he moves out in 20 years. What can we do with the building? What's going to happen with that? How can we make that adaptable for the future? We're looking for the state-of-art equipment. Obviously, we want the latest technology. We spend a lot of time, a lot of money talking to people about that. Reliability and good service, that's key. And the ability to adapt to emerging technologies. One of the things that we've been looking at, mobile phones, the ability to call a lift remotely from your office before you walk to the lift lobby, as an example. We go through that, we get ourselves in a situation where we've had massive discussions and the building goes live. And, got the wrong bit. Conclusions. BCO 2009 has changed fundamentally the way in which buildings are marketed and sold and the points of reference that we use for lifts. Robust designs gives us as a developer a secure feeling in our investment, how much money is going in there. Higher densities are now the norm and flexibility going forward. But in spite of all of that, this is what happens. Day one. What's wrong with the lifts? Tester. Nothing. They're learning the building. So that's the conclusion. I hope that's been of interest. Okay, thanks very much.